There was this father of 5 children, and he won a toy at a raffle. So he called all of his kids together to ask them which of them should have the present, because there was only one present. And he said to the kids, "Who is the most obedient? Who never talks back to mother? Who does everything that she says?" And 5 small voices answered in unison, "Okay, Dad, you get the toy." Well, today is the day that we honor fathers. There was a survey of fathers done by the Family Circle magazine that shared some interesting results. 94% fathers feel building a family is the hardest and most important thing that a man can do. 71% say fatherhood is more demanding than they expected, while 88% say fatherhood is more rewarding. 87% say the rewards of fatherhood trump those of a career, and 89% approve of men leaving fast-track careers to spend more time with their families. 90% say becoming a father made them want to be a better person and a role model for their children, while 75% feel a weight of responsibility now that they never felt before. It's great to hear those kind of statements about fathers, but in all seriousness, we are to honor our fathers and our mothers. This day in June is set aside for us to honor the fathers in this country. But we are to honor our fathers not because it's a holiday, not because it's a tradition, not because there are sales going on all over the country, but because God said so. In fact, He said so very specifically, where the Bible tells us in Ephesians chapter 6 and verses 1-3 these words: "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and your mother," which is the first commandment, also with a promise, "that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on the earth." You need to notice there, it doesn't say honor only good moms and dads. It doesn't say honor them if you like them. It doesn't say honor only the right ones. It says honor your father and your mother. And so today, we ought to honor all fathers. Today I want to speak to all of the dads that are here, whether your children are grown up or whether you're still raising a family. Because all of us dads need to hear this. Because you see, we're involved in a war today. And the battleground is not Iraq and Afghanistan. The battleground today is in our homes. And what's at stake is not our land. It's not our property. It's not our materialism. It's not our freedoms. It's more important than that. What's at stake is our children. As good as the results were from the Family Circle magazine, there's something else happening. What it is a war. And it's an important war. And in this country, we're losing the battle. Because children are turning from the faith in record numbers. It's as if as soon as they leave home and they get out of high school or they go to college, they leave the church. And if you don't believe me, look here this morning. Unless you think that it's only a problem here, it's true all over the country. Children in record numbers are turning from God. It's nothing new. It's been happening over the course of time. I want to tell you in a brief biblical story this morning that's going to be our guide for the remaining time we have today, and I'll be brief. It's found in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. It's from Judges chapter 2, verses 6-12. I'm going to give you a little bit of background here. The nation of Israel had just marched into the Promised Land, and they were settling into the land. Now, it wasn't a complete victory, because when they went in, they didn't always follow what God desired. And instead of conquering all of it, they instead settled into some of it. And just before what we're going to look at, they were instructed that they didn't do what God desired, and they repented of it. And with that in mind, let's read this important passage this morning from Judges chapter 2, verses 6 to 12. It says this: After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance. And the people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him, and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance, in the hill country of Ephraim. After that whole generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation grew up, who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of Egypt. And they followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. You see, once Joshua and his generation passed away, the next generation turned their back on God, and they worshiped the gods of the peoples around them. And well, today in 2012, they don't wait for mom and dad to pass on. They turn immediately and worship the god of television. They worship the god of fashion. They worship the god of convenience. They worship the god of this world. They worship the world. What's the world? 1 John 2:16 tells us. It says there, "For the world offers only the lust for physical pleasures, the lust for everything we see, and the pride in our possessions. These are not from the Father. They are from this evil world." And there's a passage in Romans chapter 1, verses 38 to 32 that closely parallels what's going on today in America. Furthermore, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gave them over to the depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. They become filled with every kind of wickedness and evil and greed and depravity. They are full of envy and murder and strife, deceit and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They are senseless and faithless, heartless and ruthless. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. Do you realize that we live in a culture that approves of turning its back on God? From court cases to TV to popular movies, it's okay to make fun of religion, because religion isn't important. Religion isn't relevant. It worked for my mom and dad, but it's really not for me. Well, I can tell you this morning, moms and dads, that you are on the front lines. And yes, you grandparents as well. You also need to do this because this is a war. And we're called to be a part of it. This morning I want to give you your marching orders to tackle this important task of saving children, your grandchildren. And we're going to look briefly at a few steps that will help us to do so. Because there's three ways that we can win the war. The first way that we can win the war is with our words. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 7 says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children." You see, we need to talk to our children. We need to be involved in their lives. We need to tell them about God and tell them about the Bible. We need to talk to them about our own story, what God has done for us, so that we can share it with others. Are you sharing it with your children or grandchildren? Are you really sharing what God's done in your own life? You need to do that. A study was done recently to determine the amount of interaction between fathers and their small children. First, the fathers were asked to estimate the amount of time that they spend each day communicating with their child. The average answer was about 15 to 20 minutes. The next thing they did is they took microphones and they attached them to the fathers so that each interaction could be recorded. The results of the study were shocking. The average amount of time spent by these middle-class fathers with their small children was 37 seconds per day. 37 seconds. Their direct interaction was limited to 2-point encounters daily, lasting 10 to 15 seconds each. As we look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, can that be accomplished in 37 seconds a day? You want to know how much time the culture has with your children? 37 seconds does not come close to meeting the job. So we need to communicate with our children and our grandchildren. We need to tell them about the Bible.